I'm a 2D artist, if you can call me one. In the past year though, Blender has caught my attention. Like, you're saying a software which can do 3D modeling, rigging, texturing, animation, and more is completely free. I love free and open source software, maybe a bit too much, and I'm very drawn to the idea of making assets for animation which could be seen from another angle. Something about that just tickles me in the right way. Like in 2D, you will have to redraw that. So I was like, why not give Blender a shot? So using my very little spare time, I completed the donut tutorial in 17 hours, which recently I've seen a lot of hate for, but back then the community treated it as like a rite of passage. And it did give me a good overview of what Blender is capable of, as well as a grasp of the keybinds. I did some other tutorials over the year, but I never got to doing what I actually wanted or enjoyed, that being character animation. Blender is an absolute pain to work with as a beginner, and I never got deeply invested in it. So this year I realized, if I'm gonna lock in, let's just skip all the supposed prerequisite BS and just move straight into what I wanted to do. Alright, so we'll be following the modeling for animation tutorial by Dicko, cause this guy on Reddit said so, and also it was the most comprehensive free tutorial that I could find. And so the 50 hours of pain began. Firstly, he explained some principles of modeling a character for animation as opposed to just modeling a character. The most important thing he mentioned is having good face flow, which is how, well, the faces on our model flow. Especially, they cannot like spiral because it can cause issues later on with the texturing and rigging, basically. Also, you need to model with compression and stretching in mind because your character's gonna, do that. See, that already is gonna make the process harder because you aren't just like sculpting a static model to look nice. You can't just care about that. You're preparing a model for like movement, and that can be really overwhelming when you're starting out, because when you're modeling, you're like, how am I supposed to know if this is okay when I reach the rigging phase, for example? Okay, enough whining, let's start modeling. So first, he tells us to get a reference sheet to use for our model. I didn't have my own character, so I just took his. Then we started to just block out the body based on the images, nothing too complicated. We started adding more geometry to places that stretch so that it doesn't look weird, like the shoulders, butt, elbows, and knees. Now the video was 20 minutes, but I somehow took 4 hours to do this. Firstly, because I got paranoid over the butt face flow being wrong, so I redid it only to get the same result and realizing that maybe it was okay. Cause remember, I'm not sure if this is good enough flow for animation later on. Now secondly, I swear Dicko used a different model for this part than in the last video, because his model's feet has 5 vertices between the 2 poles at the ankles, perfectly aligning with the knee geometry to make this sorta circular face flow you can see here. While in my model, which I followed step by step in the last video, has 6. It sounds simple, but it boggled my mind for like 2 hours before I settled with just making the knee with 1 extra face, which makes the front and back geometry of the leg uneven, but whatever, we move in. Onto the hands, and yes, just like 2D art, hands are also a nightmare in 3D, who could've guessed. I feel like I messed up the thumb placement and the overall spacing of the fingers. Despite the geometry place, the finger still bends weird in Mixamo. I hope that when I manually rig this, it will look fine. It didn't. As a retrospective, I felt that the worst part of my model ended up being the hands. Despite my constant adjustments, they just look shit. I'll get them better next time. Alright, so for the face, our process will be to block out the general shape of the face first, remesh it into a million vertices, and sculpt in the fine details. Finally, we'll retopologize it to lower the poly count and to construct a face flow that is animation ready. Sculpting the face was tedious, but it was the most satisfying part. It looked kinda bad at first, but I locked in the next day, and my character actually started to take form. I can't believe it, it actually looked alright. And for the first time since starting the paint tutorials, I felt a spark of joy. Could 3D modeling be fun? Retopology was a pain in the ass, but I did it. So if you don't know what retopology is, it's basically where we redo the topology of, in this instance, a very high poly sculpt in order to get an object of roughly the same look, but with ideal topology. And look at that! Since my character looks kinda different from Dicko's, I think she deserves her own name. So she can be called Wryful Jr. Yeah, JK, no. She can be named Amy. And Amy is finally taking shape. But look, the head that I gave my model gave her a sense of fullness and identity. Just like how you could give me a sense of fullness and identity if you liked and subscribed. Thanks. For hair, we got a Bezier curve to dictate the hair flow of a single lock, and link it to a Bezier circle to give it its shape. You can do this to bring out the details to really show the hair volume with its indents and bumps and such. Then you convert it to a mesh and try to cut down on the poly count because it's a lot. So for a lower poly character, you would ideally combine this with some blocks made of basic shapes, but I was like nah and just went full in with curves. And I got what Dicko meant when he said that modeling the hair could take just as long as modeling the rest of the character. This already took like 7 hours doing the hair. If I chased perfection, it probably would have taken way longer. So let's move on. The clothes were easy, especially for tighter clothes. You can mostly just select the parts of the body to roughly outline the clothes shape, duplicate and make a clothes object. So yeah, I went with a simple tank top and shorts for her to keep it simple. Lastly, we added the teeth, which I challenged myself to model without a step-by-step. Then we fixed up the feet and finally fixed the face flows, which made me realize that my flow in some areas looked sus. With my abilities thus far, I couldn't confirm whether it was bad, so I'll say it was just sus. I spent like 5 hours fixing those, almost giving up modeling completely in the process. But I pushed through, we did it. We got a fully modeled character, ready for texturing and rigging, presumably. While I could have just downloaded a body mesh, I felt like there was value in learning manual modeling, as it made me understand the intent of everything placed and the process of making it. Coming from a bit of 2D background, the sculpting of the face felt the most familiar to me. If anyone's on a similar journey, I guess I'll say don't give up. Anyways, I'll be texturing my character next, so subscribe to catch the next video. Bye.